that was a massive turning point for me.
Was there a process that you used to replace that?
One for me was, I am the way I am, and there's nothing that's going to change that in a positive way. I didn't realize how malleable we are as humans. I remember somebody suggested a book, and I said, why? What's the point of I just couldn't fathom, as silly as that might sound now.
Yeah.
So that was a really challenging thing for me to rebuild. I read a book called Mindsets by Dweck, and I remember identifying with every single example she used of somebody who had a fixed mindset. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, this book is about me. This book is about me 1,000%.
You are listening to the 5 a.m. podcast, and today is your day. Kevin, thank you for joining the 5 a.m. podcast this morning.
Michael, thank you so very much for having me. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. I aspire to live up to it.
Amen. Well, I appreciate that. It's always good to do the research to find out who we're talking to and gild the lily, as Geoffrey Chaucer had said. Now, Kevin, you've been remarkably open about that contemplating suicide, despite having what many consider the external markers of success. Could you take us maybe a little bit deeper into that disconnect between your outer achievements and that inner turmoil? And was there a shift that came along that helped your mindset?
Yeah, so I was raised by my mom and my grandmother. I didn't know my dad. I didn't meet my dad until I was 27. Grew up lower middle class, didn't go to college, did not feel like I was going to be successful or amount to almost anything in life. So you can see the direction that my mindset was already at. I identified as somebody who was not smart, never going to be successful, and would have to get really lucky if I was going to be successful. So if you fast forward to when I was in my mid-20s, somehow, whether it's luck or my personality, I got a really good job. And I went from making $15 an hour as a construction laborer to anywhere from $60 to $120 an hour doing this new job. And I then decided that now I'm going to be successful. And I think I made the mistake that a lot of us make. I thought external success, quote unquote, was going to fix internal voids. So here I am competing in a bodybuilding show, quite literally in the best shape I will ever be. My girlfriend at the time is a model. I have this job, I have a sports car, I have a brand new apartment, I have great friends. I thought if I stacked the external wood, the fire would burn brighter. And unfortunately, that is not the case. And I think a lot of us, unfortunately, fall into that. And I think it logically makes sense. If you aspire to get all the things you didn't have, the problems that came from not having them should go away. Unfortunately, that is not the case. So yeah, that is my lesson that I learned from that. External things do not fix internal voids, unfortunately.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? And some of us have a easier or harder time discovering the truth of that. So you transformed from someone struggling with your own mental health issues to impacting millions through your platform. At what point did you realize that maybe your personal healing journey could become a mission to help others?
Very early. Honestly, even pre-podcast, it was before the mental health stuff, but pre-podcast, I was helping people with their relationships, even though I was terrible at them. I don't know how that happened, but I would just post things on Snapchat. People would reach out, and then people, for some reason, were just incredibly vulnerable with me. And for me, that was a suggestion that's whatever I'm doing is working. I feel really fulfilled doing it. So yeah, long before the podcast, I actually felt like my journey and what I was trying to learn could somehow add value into people's lives. And then obviously, I mean, when the podcast started and people would reach out, there was always this through line of people being very, very, very vulnerable. And the pattern was it was women. And as a tattooed bodybuilder, I thought it was going to be tattooed bodybuilding men that listened to our podcast. We learned pretty quickly that whether it was just the healthy masculine energy or whatever it was, women felt safe reaching out to us. And that is when things really, really started to compound, and it started to make a lot of sense at that point.
Wow. And so has that purpose evolved over these 2000?
Yes. Yeah, it's definitely evolved. And I think the hardest part of this whole thing is trying to figure out who I am every day, Because if I want to lead this charge and I want to have a podcast that talks about getting a little bit better every day, I have to start with myself. And you'd think 2,000 something episodes, I know exactly who I am on the microphone. I change every week at this point. So not only has the mission and the journey and the way we want to do it changed, but I'm changing every day, which means I need to re-aim every single day. And that's a really, I don't know, that's probably a part that you might not guess, right?
Yeah.
You think,
Right.
oh, you've been doing this long enough, you must know exactly who you are. Quite the opposite at this point. Quite the opposite.
Well, we really are unopened gifts, even to ourselves.
Yes.
And we live in a world where, we would hear from Ron Popeil, set it and forget it. But that's not life. That might work well for roasting your chicken.
It works well in infomercials.
It works well in infomercials, but nowhere else, ladies and gentlemen.
No.
So these mindset shifts, or maybe their growths, they've allowed you to maintain, I think, a level of maybe authority or leadership in people's lives. Are there some habits that you've developed that where you can stay on top of ensuring that your best self is what you're, and not just presenting, but actually living?
I try my best to start the day and end the day for me. So every morning, I essentially get up the same time every day, 7 days a week. I like getting up early. I operate better that way. And I'm in the gym 95% of the time. That for me is a pillar. Physical fitness, it's not just about the body, but it's flow, it's therapy, it's just my time away to pour into myself. So the morning is for me. And then from whatever time it is, right, 9 a.m. until who knows what time at night, I'm doing this. But every single night, my wife and I have a little bit of unwind time together. And it makes sure that I can start the day with me, I can end the night with me, in the hopes that I can start the next day with me. So fitness is a big one. I always have water on my person. You'll never see me dehydrated. I'm always hydrated. I really, really try intentionally to get at least 8 hours of sleep every night. So I think at the end of the day, I'm now more of the understanding that the more I pour into me and the more sustainable I make this journey for myself, the more I can give back. You can't pour from an empty cup. The old adage of you got to put the mask on yourself first when the airplane loses oxygen. It's the same thing here, except every day is a new journey. So yeah, there's a lot of habits that are built in just so I can make sure I can sustain doing this at a relatively high level.
Thanks for watching the show. Just a reminder that you can get all of our resources, other episodes, and read our blog posts at 5ampodcast.com. Hey, 5am friends, we're on a mission to bring these transformative conversations to a greater audience through more FM radio, cable TV, and Roku TV, and we need your help to make that happen. If you've found value in our discussions, please consider supporting this expansion at buymeacoffee.com/5ampodcast. That's the number 5am podcast. Every dollar brings us closer to our goal. Thanks for being part of this journey. Together, we're changing lives one morning momentum at a time. Yes. Well, let's talk about the gym and physical fitness for a moment. They talk about, I've heard it said, I should say, that our trauma can rest on our, like, that C5 through 8 vertebrae, little esoteric perhaps, but that we're spiritual beings as much as we are physical. Can you talk a little bit about the transformation in maybe reasons to go to the gym versus like physical appearance versus maybe spiritual appearance?
Yeah, for sure. My thesis is you will be far less stressed out, which will create an opportunity for you to live in a better state. And theoretically, you will be able to impact everything around you in a more positive light. Is it going to change everything? No, it's going to change some things.
Yes.
That's one thing. The second thing is when you do something on a consistent basis, that thing starts to attach to part of your identity. If you're out there right now and you identify with this, I am not somebody who is very consistent. I think the gym is one of the best ways to build that consistency, to shift that identity to the point where you can say, I am somebody who is very consistent, and then imagine what you can carry that over to in the rest of your life. That's a piece of it. And I think that one of the most valuable things we can do as humans is invest in ourselves. If you want to feel more worthy, you want to have a higher level of self-worth, you want to believe in yourself, I'm not saying you have to go to the gym to change your appearance to feel more worthy. But what I am saying is if you set and keep small promises to yourself, that is what valuing yourself as a human being actually looks like. Valuing yourself is not doing the easy thing when it's easy. It's doing the hard but necessary thing that you know you'll be grateful that you did. And I think the gym is just a really good example, or just fitness in general, right? You don't have to go lift weights like I do. You can go for a run, you can do whatever it is for you. But there's something about setting and keeping small promises to yourself that I think really help you from a self-worth, a self-trust, a self-belief place as well.
Yes. And I will just in from what you were talking, it jogged my memory about the book Promises to Keep, how Jackie Robinson changed America. And we talk about reading in books and things like that, of course, on 5 a.m. podcast, but that might be something for our listeners if their curiosity is piqued by what you're talking about. It is a pretty interesting book. So I'll just whet people's appetite with that. But if there's that phrase, let me count the ways. If we think about what you were just describing from the benefits of going to the gym, and there's an old Stoic quote that goes along the lines of, it's a shame for a man to go to the grave without finding out what he was physically capable of. That's a Michael-fied version of that quote. But if we always travel in the same direction as our friends. And so, ladies and gentlemen, if physical activity is on your mind, and I do realize that January's coming sometime, it's always on the calendar. There's always these New Year's resolutions. Start early. That's what I would recommend. Start early and start often. You can always pick it back up. But one of the benefits of going to the gym that we didn't actually talk about is our circle of friends. Because as we're going through life, we find out that we might have stinking thinking. We might be having friends that have stinking thinking, and we realize, man, I need to change my mindset. And sometimes, I won't even say unfortunately, but sometimes fortunately, we come to the realization that we might need to change friends. And one of the things I found from going to the gym is you meet a lot of like-minded people on various levels of the fitness spectrum, we could even say. Kevin, do you have a story maybe where you came to the realization that you needed to find some new friends?
I was dating a young lady and she said, I want to meet your friends. And we were relatively new at this point. And I said, yeah, sure, come over. We'll have a cookout. I'll have my friends over. It'll be amazing. And she said, who am I going to meet? So I went on to describe the two friends that she was going to meet the most. She was going to get the closest to. And I said, okay, so one, he's like my big brother. He's going to be so curious about you. He's going to ask you a bunch of questions. He's going to make you laugh. He's going to talk me up to a degree that I cannot possibly live up to. He's just a great man. He's going to be a really positive man. And I said, the other one. And then I paused. And I said, oh no. He's going to make fun of you. He's going to make fun of me to you. He is going to say wildly inappropriate things. He's going to not take anything seriously. He's extremely immature. And he's just going to say, well, that's the way I am. And I realized in that moment, and I asked myself this question that changed my life, are the people in my life the best from my past or the best for my future? And that is one of those questions you can't put the answer back in the box. And my answer was, one of these people is what's best for my future. And the other one I used to have fun partying with and doing this with and going out with. And I don't think this person really has a chapter in the book of the future of my life. So that was the beginning of when we started to divert a little bit. I reallocated time to other places, and that person, unfortunately, I do not speak with at all today. And I know at times that sounds empowering, and I think it is. I think the result is empowering, but that was one of the most painful things ever. I still think about this person. I miss this person all the time. So I'm not the guy who says, yeah, leave all your friends. I think it's really, really challenging, and at the end of the day, you have to decide, do I like the comfort of what I know, or do I like the opportunity that I don't know yet? I chose the second one, and I'm definitely grateful I did, but gratitude can also have downsides, right? And there are some downsides with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we continually have the opportunity to decide with whom and how we walk through life. But I do want to ask you about your brand, Next Level University. How do you personally define what it means to reach that next level in life? And has that definition maybe matured a little bit through your journey?
Yeah, I think in the beginning, it was the hyper-conscious podcast, which means acutely aware because I want to know everything about myself. Eventually it evolved because nobody knows what that means, so that's not going to work. It means putting in a little bit more today than you did yesterday, and then doing the same thing tomorrow. It doesn't mean today you're going to move mountains and tomorrow you're going to move bigger ones. It doesn't mean that. It might be a spoonful, it might be a shovelful, it might be a backhoe full, whatever, but it's personal for you. No matter where you are, no matter who you are, there is a next level for you. And my next level is going to look different than Michael's, which is going to look different than Bob's, everybody has a little bit of a different next level. But it's just doing a little bit more today for yourself, for the world, for impact, for mastery than you did yesterday. And yeah, honestly, at this point, it's gotten way harder because in the beginning, growth is kind of easy, right? I'll just read 5 pages and that's me growing more than I've ever grown before. That's awesome. Now I've read a lot of books, so I have to be way, way more intentional about what that growth actually is. And there's a lot of pressure. It's privilege pressure because I chose this, but I have to get better every day. It doesn't even matter if I want to. The entire brand is built upon us being able to lead people to a better life. So I think the pressure of that and the reality of that has come on a lot, and also the responsibility and the privilege of that is something that's I'm way more aware of now. So it's definitely evolved in many ways, but I would say those are probably the most obvious ways to me.
Right. And it is, I suppose we could say it follows life, the metaphor of life, or the stream, the journey of it has been said, mo money, mo problems.
It has been said.
It has been said. But it's true that at various levels through life, we get to the point where we're still learning. We think we know it all. We'd like to portray ourselves as knowledgeable and wise and full of witty banter. But there comes a point where, man, I still continue to grow. I still continue to have to read because I don't want to lie to myself and say, I know it all. I know everything. I can float along down the stream. And the one chapter I never read in the book was how to deal with rapids. And there's a bend in the river. You don't always know what's coming next. But was there some moments through your progression where you were like, I think I'm lying to myself. I'm not telling myself the truth about it, maybe capacity of time or effort or some thoughts in the head?
I will never forget this. I was working out with so it was my business partner and a friend of ours. And again, fitness is my thing. So I have a lot of experience in the gym. So when I'm in the gym, that's the most confident version of me. Feeling great, having a great workout, looking good, awesome. We finish the workout, and then we start talking about business. And at this point, this was probably 2019, 2020, I was not very well-versed in business. I didn't understand it. I didn't know how it worked. And the 2 people I was talking with knew a lot about business. And I had this moment where I looked at them and said, how freaking arrogant are they? Like, how much ego are these 2 guys living in? And then I had this moment in real time where I said, is this a them problem or is this a you problem, Kev? And I had to sit with that and say, no, this is a me problem. It's not their fault they know more about business than I do. It's my fault that I haven't got there yet, and I can get there. So yeah, that was a really challenging thing for me because I felt really bad about myself. There was shame around that, and I didn't really want to admit it. Because what does it mean about me if I admit that I actually am villainizing people I care about because I'm not ready to look in the mirror? So yeah, that was a pivotal moment for me. Because I think a lot of people decide on the other thing and they say, no, it's up to them. Yeah. It's their fault, it's their problem. No, this was me. This was a me issue, and that's an issue that I had to go to work on for sure.
Right. And it's that coming to terms with, oh man, I am the common denominator in all of my problems. But on the flip side, I'd like to say I'm the common denominator in all my successes, but I can't say that. I know I can say that I'm the common denominator in all my problems because I'm always there. It's kind of, yeah. So we've talked about rivers, roads. Let's talk about roller coasters for a moment. Building a business can be a physical, financial, and emotional roller coaster. So you've built $1 million business, and that is something that many people aspire to. And so there's been a lot of knowledge that you've gained along the way. Were there maybe some unexpected emotional challenges that you faced in scaling to get where you wanted to be or where you are now?
Being broke, for sure. Yeah, I think long before the $1 million business, there's a $1 million idea with nobody that believes in it. So, yeah, for me, very honestly, the hardest part of this whole journey hasn't necessarily been the long hours or waking up early. I'm pretty good at that stuff. In 2019, my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, I couldn't afford to buy Christmas presents for her. She had to cover the bills. It was bad. I mean, we got to the place in the movie where the character pulls up and their car breaks down at every red light and stop sign. And I was the character, and this was a real life movie. And eventually it got to the point where I couldn't pay my car insurance and I got sent to collections. I mean, that type of emotional struggle for me was just something that I did not know was going to happen, and I didn't know how to get through it. And there was a lot of sleepless nights and trying to figure out how this was going to work, if this even was going to work. Those were the hardest times for sure in this journey. I never wanted to quit. I never thought about quitting. I love this. I want to figure out a way to do it. But I learned a lot about myself in those moments of, if you've ever tried to hold your breath for a long period of time, there's a moment where you say, I can't do it for much longer. You usually can. I mean, you usually got more to give. And that was the lesson for me in that. There was a lot of emotional turmoil, and I went through a lot, but I also think it made me stronger, one. And two, so much of what I learned about money and business and all that stuff, I learned when I was in the dark. And unfortunately, I think that's kind of the way it goes, right? The things we learn to dig ourselves out of the hole eventually become the things that we can use to build skyscrapers. And unfortunately, I had to dig the hole pretty deep for the foundation.
That's right. And we never want to rob somebody of their rock bottom, because people, maybe they need to find that there's something more that they can give. They need to find that, oh man, I can hold my breath a little bit longer. And I think for me, you go through financial challenges because you know that you're building, and you think you know about delayed gratification. There must have been a point then when you realized, so some of these momentary afflictions are just that. They're momentary. They're kind of like flies or mosquitoes that are flying around. Was there a time where you realized that, oh, this is just momentary, and I'm going to learn to ignore the pain and power through it?
I don't know. I don't know if I ever really got to that point, because I'm somebody I'm very certainty driven.
Okay.
So it was almost, for me, I'll hold my breath until I can come up for air. And I don't think I ever really understood that when you come up for air, it doesn't mean you're up for air. There's another wave coming.
Yeah.
So you have to get better at holding your breath. So I don't know if I ever really got to the place. I think now I'm there. But I mean, it took me 7-8 years of this to really get to the point where I understand the way I feel. So much of that is just circumstantial and what's going on around me. It doesn't mean anything is real about it necessarily. And if my behavior changes when my emotions change, I'm not going to get the result I want in the long run. So it's very important for me to be as aware of that as possible. But this is a newer thing for me. I always showed up, and I did it scared, and I did it nervous, and I did it anxious. But it was more me just overpowering what I wanted to do, as opposed to just saying, okay, this is all going to be fine. Let's remove emotions. Let's put emotions to the side. So now, yes, the majority of the time, it was just brute force, honestly.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty sure that personal strength will beat obstacles anytime.
The goal. That's the goal.
That's the goal, right? And of course, the saying of obstacles aren't in the way, they are the way. And we don't always like that. We don't always like that resistance training and having to power through. But then when we get a personal record in the gym, or we find out that, wow, I actually succeeded where I was sure, everybody was sure I was going to fail. And I guess that can be a little bit of vulnerability, or authenticity, as some might say, and you advocate for vulnerability as a strength. Can you share a specific instance where being vulnerable in maybe your content or business created a breakthrough that you don't think would have happened otherwise?
We were interviewing a friend of ours. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist.
Okay.
I always mess the order of that up.
Yeah.
And we went to her studio in New York, and we set up all of our equipment. It was amazing. It was a great conversation. And we got to the point in the interview where I was talking about how I had dealt with a porn addiction. And we packed up our equipment, and my business partner and I were leaving. And he said, I can't believe you just said that. I can't believe you just came out and said that in front of however many thousands of people are going to see this. And I said, I have a firm belief that there are a ton of people who aren't ready to admit it, but kind of know they have a problem. And I got a bunch of messages from people after that episode came out. Men, women, all over the map. That was a suggestion to me that somebody has to go first when it comes to vulnerability. And in many cases, I feel comfortable going first. Now, is somebody going to reach out and say, oh my goodness, you're such a loser because you had an addiction to porn? Maybe. But I have a firm belief that the people who reach out saying thank you it's so much more worth it than the people that reach out that don't. So that was one of the first times I really put myself out there. And it went better than expected. I was really proud of the fact that I was that honest. And that was a line in the sand for me of, I want to do my best to live in the truth publicly as much as possible. Obviously not to a detrimental amount, but yeah, it was a really good suggestion that there's proof of concept here.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to lean into that more, and I think that's definitely helped me be more impactful. And one of my goals, whether or not I'm going to be able to accomplish, I don't know, is to remain relatable through this journey. And while my behaviors, quote unquote, might not always be relatable, I think my stories can be, and I think my fears and my anxieties can be, and my experiences can be.
Right.
So for me, it's important. I have to be vulnerable, because if I'm not vulnerable, I'm not going to be able to be relatable. And it's really important for me to be relatable.
Yeah. And I think our society is kind of checked out of the camera ready lifestyle. In a sense, it used to be you'd go to Times Square and you'd see all the billboards. Everything was larger than life. Or, I think of younger years being in Chicago, driving on the interstate and seeing the sports idols painted and huge murals on buildings and walls. And that larger than life, that camera ready idea. And people love the authenticity because we're all going through it with one addiction or time vampire or something like that. Can you talk about how you might relate overcoming this porn addiction to maybe overeating or alcohol or other vices or proclivities that people might have?
For me, I knew I had some sort of problem. I knew that there was shame around the problem. And I think what happens for a lot of us is it has to cross a certain pain threshold before we're willing to do something about it. And it got to the point where I was having sexual dysfunction. So the pain was great enough for me to change my behavior. And I think if we run from the truth, if we run from the pain, if we run from the discomfort, we can paint ourselves into this imaginary world that doesn't exist. So I think you have to look in the mirror of what your behavior is creating, understanding there's going to be shame, there's going to be regret, there's going to be self-judgment. And one day, hopefully, you'll be able to look back on all that, and then you can be the lighthouse for somebody who's going through that same thing. But I think it's just the admittance factor. I think that's probably the biggest thing is I had to sit down and say, this is a problem. This is a problem that I am not stopping. I'm participating in this problem. And what is the first thing I can do? That is what I would put out there. It didn't happen overnight. It took a while. I failed at it, right? I made mistakes. I slipped up. And eventually it got to the place where it was like, I can't imagine that'll ever happen again. But that took years. I think that goes to the New Year's resolution comment you made earlier. It's you don't have to say I'm never going to do it again. It's I'm going to start. And eventually starting becomes continuing, and eventually continuing becomes normal. And then I won't say you forget what it's like, but yeah, it gets to the point where that's your new identity. Going back to the identity thing we talked about earlier.
Yeah, that's right. And there's a reason why you get chips and cake.
Yeah.
Depending on the group that you're in 100%. To celebrate your wins.
Yeah, you got to celebrate the wins for sure.
You got to celebrate the wins. And so if there's somebody out there and they're listening and maybe you've just started an anti-addiction journey, well, we applaud you if you're on day 1 or day 5 or day 275. Keep at it because it's one foot in front of the other. And so much mindset gets placed into us, and then we have to kind of clean the room that is our mind. And I was thinking of, I heard this comment about who God is, and if he's loving and kind, why do bad things happen? Or we might say, why me, Lord, when something bad happens? But do we say, why me, Lord, when something good happens? And the thought I was having while you were talking is we get to be that source of light and love in this world that our Creator put into us. And so if people might be having a hard time and not knowing which direction to turn, but yet someone in the friend group sees this and maybe they're a little hesitant to invite them to their AA group or to something else. Do you have a word of advice to that person that sees their friend struggling, who needs maybe some salt and light and some love in their life, but they're just having, as a friend, hard to break through that barrier?
The thing that's always worked really well for me, friends, with my wife, with my business partner, are you looking for a shoulder or are you looking for strategy? Not everybody is ready to do the thing that we think is best for them yet. So if somebody comes to you and opens up, don't assume that they're looking for you to solve their problem. Sometimes they just want to test out what it's like to throw the truth out there. That is the question or the prompt. I guess that's more of a reactive than proactive thing. That would be the reactive thing. The proactive thing is, I think the way you act around people, it suggests to them the way you'll act around them when they're truthful. So if you gossip about other people, the people around you are not going to share stuff with you. It would be highly illogical to do that because you're not just gossiping with them. Most likely you're gossiping with other people. So the way you talk about other people behind their back is a representation of the way you're going to talk about me behind mine. I'm probably not going to be vulnerable. So yeah, I think that's what it means to be a safe person.
Yeah,
I feel like
good.
I can tell you anything because I know a lot of other people have told you stuff too. That would be the more, I guess that's high level. Just show up as the best version of yourself. That's probably the best advice out.
Oh, that's good. And that comes down to self-awareness, I think, which is something that you've talked about, and how self-awareness really is critical for our personal development and developing those characters and qualities. Like your friend saying, Michael, Kevin, they're not gossips. I've been wanting to talk to somebody for a long time, and I've been watching those two guys, and I think my secret is safe with them.
It's the goal. Yeah, that's
the goal, right? So is there a daily practice or a reflection or journaling technique that maybe you've found effective in increasing your own self-awareness?
We have a journal that we, as a company, that I use. So I journal essentially every day. I've been messing up lately. I'm getting back on it. I've just been overwhelmed and it's kind of fallen off the map, unfortunately. I have found that when I am really high emotionally or really low emotionally, I go look at old content. That is my thing that I do. I have a lot of content, which helps. But I'll go when I feel like it's the end of the world. I will go look at old content and say, wow, we have come a long way. Wow, we have come a long way. When I feel like I'm the man and nothing could possibly go wrong, I go look at old content and say, wow, I was terrible. Wow, I was terrible. And if I do another 2,000 episodes, I'm going to look back at this episode and think this one was garbage too. So do not get a big head, sir. Do not get a big head. Reflection helps me anchor to what is real. I don't do it daily necessarily, but I have that moment where I'll have a really bad day. I'll put on Rooster by Alice in Chains. There's a line where it says, they haven't found a way to kill me yet. I just listen to that on repeat. And then I look at old content. And that's my coping mechanism.
Yeah. That's great. It is good what music brings to the soul and to the ear gates. Mm-hmm. And it's when I was much younger, I loved to just sit in a dark room and listen to my music. And thinking back now, I was like, what was going through little Michael's head there for a moment? But I loved.
What were you listening to? Specific.
Oh man, I love to be able to shut off the eye gate, let's say, because I'm so visually motivated and I've loved watching TV. But I realized as I was growing that, man, I really needed to just turn the lights out. So there's no color, there's no distractions, and I could just listen to the details in the music. And I realize that there's a lot of industry and programming or whatever the case might be, but to be able to listen on some good audio equipment and hear the intricacies of those melodies that are around us. But yeah, I'm going to pivot in my conversation
No
because I got a
worries.
little distracted with the music, and
I
maybe
asked the
that's
question, so I was
yeah,
ready.
no,
I was ready
that's
to go
good.
down there, Michael.
My musical tastes are as varied as a sunset. So it might be jazz one day, it might be someone like Sabaton or something, but yeah, it's usually jazz. I know on the weekend I was actually listening to Artie Shaw, some 1940s jazz, but doing a little woodworking in the garage, and it just seemed like that was the right music for the moment.
I dig it.
But we've got a comment section, ladies and gentlemen, and while we're on the subject of one of my favorite topics, which is music, we'd love to hear from you, and Kevin would love to hear from you. Maybe it's a triumph you've had or a song you love to get something. Maybe it's not Alice in Chains, maybe it's something else, but maybe it's just the Woohoo song from Blink 182.
There you go.
That never gets old. That guitar riff.
Isn't that Blur?
Oh, that's Blur. I'm
Blur.
sorry, man. I can't believe Blink 182. My apologies, gentlemen. That's Blur. Yes. But who doesn't love to listen to that little riff every once in a while? And so I want to then ask you, here's the hard right turn back onto the interview script and the questions, but this self-improvement that we were talking about before our musical interlude, you advocate for a holistic approach to self-improvement. Could you maybe break down the key pillars of this approach and explain how they can interconnect and sustain some growth?
Health, wealth, and love. Those are the pillars in my opinion. Health, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. Again, it's not just about looking good at the gym with your shirt off. It's the thoughts you have before you go to bed. Are you taking care of yourself? Are you taking care of your mental health? All of that. So that's health. Wealth, how you make your money. What do you do with it? Where do you invest it? That, right? And wealth of time too. That's a piece of it. And then love, self-love, family love, significant other love. At the end of the day, I think the hard understanding that I've had, which seems like truth at this point, is it's really hard to level up in life, love, health, and wealth at the same time. Right now, I'm not really physically leveling up in this moment. I'm leveling up the skill of speaking and podcasting and helping business because I'm talking about the business to people.
Yeah.
Love it. But I'm not with my wife. Right now, I'm pouring into wealth. But I think that's why, going back to what we talked about earlier, the morning is for health, the day is for wealth, and the night is for love. And essentially, if you can set it up, now, but here's the thing. If you're naturally really good at the wealth part, you're going to have to reallocate more to the other buckets than maybe somebody else would. If you're really good at the health part, you might have to reallocate some of the water over to the other buckets. And essentially, there's always a bucket that has a bigger hole in it. And you got to make sure you're reallocating water at all times. And my wife and I went away this weekend, and it was amazing. I came back. It's Monday when we're recording this. Everything was on fire, and I had to put out a bunch of fires. I spent a lot of time pouring into the love bucket this weekend, but not necessarily the business bucket. So there's only so much water, right, at the end of the day, and you gotta put it in the right buckets according to your values.
Yeah. And have some good systems in place too. And I often think and mention that the book E-Myth Revisited. And have you found then some systems, speaking of these buckets, of how to set some things up so that maybe some of your buckets have a smaller leak in them?
Our systems are mostly relied upon by the humans that are running them at this point. Yeah. So we have a podcast production team. We have an audio team, a video team, a social media team. We have a lot of people behind the scenes that make this possible. You just don't see them, unfortunately. So yeah, there's a lot of systems. My business partner is an engineer, so he is a systems thinker through and through.
Totally.
So if it was up to me, we'd probably have none, but we'd also be in a lot of trouble. So yes,
right.
There are many systems. I cannot take credit for almost any of them because that is just not the way I was wired.
Right. So as you were talking about these buckets, and I really like that of portioning out your day, that this part is for the physical, this part's for the wealth, this part's for the love. If there's somebody, let's say they're watching and or listening on the radio, and they're saying, I realize what I've been doing doesn't give me the best feeling. It gives me the money, but I'm not really happy with the emotional or spiritual side of this bucket in my life. Are there some tips that you might have on starting to find what would actually fill the wealth bucket and themselves emotionally, and be able to make a change over to something that's more fulfilling?
That is a tough one. That is a tough one. The answer I usually give is you're most likely going to have to keep doing the thing that makes the money while you do the thing that is super fulfilling on the side until the percentages add up. So let's say right now you have to do 100%, we'll just say 9 to 5 in this example, 100% 9 to 5 and 20% photography. Say that's what you want to do. You're probably going to have to do 100% 9 to 5 until you get to like 60% photography, and eventually it might start to switch. It sounds really cool to say I left a 6-figure income to do this. Do not do that. Terrible advice. Don't do that. I don't want you to have to go through what I went through. I could have been way more intentional, but I think it just, whatever time you have afforded to you for maybe R&R or watching football, whatever it might be, you got to take that time and put it into the thing that's going to fulfill you.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is it makes the journey hard because essentially you're working 2 full-time jobs. But the example I always give is you're most likely not going to go from green, luscious grass to green, luscious grass. You're going to have to go through dirt, mud, short grass, and then eventually it can be green and luscious, but that just takes time. So I think that's probably the conversation. And I think the other thing, and this has helped me a ton, especially when I'm working with people, I don't care what your goals are. I care what you're willing to have your life look like until you accomplish them. If we think of what we want our life to look like as opposed to what goals we want to accomplish, oftentimes those are very different, potentially opposite things. If you want more time with your family, that's different than something else. So redefining what quote unquote success means to you and saying, okay, I want to be home at a certain time. I want to be done at a certain time. I want to start whatever. That way you can play the game as you decide, as opposed to the way you've been playing it for however long.
And I know you've talked about unlearning, and what are some of those, that seems fitting now to talk about unlearning, but I always like to bring up the stinking thinking. But what were some of those challenging beliefs or habits maybe that you had to unlearn? And was there a process that you used to replace that?
One for me was I am the way I am, and there's nothing that's going to change that in a positive way. I didn't realize how malleable we are as humans. I remember somebody suggested a book, and I said, why? What's the point of I just couldn't fathom, as silly as that might sound now.
Yeah.
So that was a really challenging thing for me to rebuild. I read a book called Mindsets by Carol Dweck. And I remember identifying with every single example she used of somebody who had a fixed mindset. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, this book is about me. This book is about me 1,000%. And then that brought awareness to the fact that there's a difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And you can actually change that. And there's like science that proves that. My goodness. That was a massive turning point for me. That was a really big thing. And I think money buys happiness. That story that I told in the beginning was all about how I went and got all the external things, assuming it was going to fix internal voids. Money can buy opportunities. Money can buy options. And I do believe money can buy momentary bouts of happiness. I don't think money can buy fulfillment.
True story.
That's a redefinition for me. Money, it can buy pieces of happiness. It's not going to buy fulfillment. I think fulfillment comes from growth and contribution and being part of something that's way greater than yourself. And I don't know if money is really ever going to do that for you. So that was another thing I had to unlearn, redefine, and then focus on learning.
Yeah. And I like how you're phrasing that and bringing that up, because if we think in terms of like the fiat currency that we have, that money that, man, we can go to the store and have a spending spree on credit or on money that we've earned. But then when we look at all of those other relationship things and the health things and what the light and love that we can bring to other people, we realize that, well, money might be a way of keeping score or giving us some endorphins, but that the other capacities that humans are endowed with and created with, where we can brighten somebody's day or help someone kick an addiction or learn that I don't have to learn anything. And then all of a sudden they get a book and all of a sudden, like, man, my mind is blown. I did need to read this. And we had a fellow on back in the summer, late spring, Dennis Henson, who wrote this book, and it's just a collection of stories of success and poems and things like that from the past. It is amazing to read how many rags to riches stories there are in America. And even if you think, I think it's the Patel family. I was watching something about hotels yesterday and how one of the patriarchs of the family came to America, bought a hotel, or a motel, so his family could live in one of the suites, and they just continued to acquire over time. And that still, I think that still is available to people. That American dream is still viable. And it's wonderful, just the conversation we've been having about this, the capacity, the ability that we have as humans to break out of old mindsets of upbringings, whatever the case might be. But Kevin, tell our people how they can get in touch with you.
Very well said. Very beautifully wrapped up. Beautifully wrapped up. Beautiful. The podcast is called Next Level University. As we've mentioned, we do an episode every single day, and the goal is to help you level up your life, your love, health, and wealth. That's the goal. If you need anything, my email is kevin@nextleveluniverse.com. I do my own emails. If I can add value, please, please, please let me know. And if you want to see pictures of me in the gym, my wife and I, and our cats, my handle on Instagram is @neverquitkid.
Nice. I love that. So just before we turn out the lights in the studios, can you share maybe a significant failure in your business or content strategy that ultimately led to greater success?
No, I have no failures ever of all time. So we had a mentor who is a very high level net worth individual, $40, $50 million probably. He wanted to start a podcast. He wanted me to help him. And I said, cool, what you're looking for is this amount of money. And he said, well, instead of that amount of money, what if I give you this amount of money and I let you sponsor the podcast and I'll connect you with some of my friends and I'll help you out? And I said, no, it is this amount of money or nothing. He chose nothing. And I couldn't understand why somebody that had that amount of money was pulling me over the coals for a couple $100 a month. And then I realized that it's the principle of it. He's a principle-based human, and it's the principle of, well, I would like to do it for cheaper, and this is my option that I'm going to give to you, and I think we can make it a win-win-win. I lost a really big opportunity, and that helped me stay humble. If you can make it a win-win-win, that's what's best for everybody. And I was too rigid, and I was too arrogant, and I got beat up for it. And in retrospect, it's one of the best things ever. Did he do that intentionally to teach me a lesson? There's a piece of me that thinks he might have.
Probably.
And I'm grateful for that now. At the time, it was the end of the world, but I can tell you, I will never let that happen again, and it has not happened again in the way that it happened. And yeah, I learned that lesson very early on, thankfully.
That's good. That's good. Valuable lesson too, to learn of the opportunities that come with networking and relationships and collaborations. Sure. So then the next horizon, the next sunset, with everything that you've accomplished already, what's that next mountain that you're looking to climb?
The mountain that we're looking to climb is a mountain that always gets bigger, so we'll effectively never get to the summit. We're trying to have the most successful success company on the planet. So that's the 50, 60-year goal. Tomorrow, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to try to get a little bit better than I was today, and rinse and repeat that for long enough. And we hope that'll be the case. But outside of that, we're very unsexy. We're very tied to the fundamentals and the principles. And we believe that if we just do this long enough and just get a little bit better every day, the compound effect will take over and we will not recognize what we've created. So massive goal in the long run, very small goals in the short term.
So what then do you hope will be your lasting legacy from your work?
Ooh.
Or maybe a lasting impact?
I think it would depend if you asked Alan, my business partner, and me. Legacy is his number one word, so he's always thinking of that. I understand at this point that my legacy or my impact is whatever you took from this conversation, whether you're watching or listening, because you most likely don't know who I am, and I don't expect you to, and you most likely will never hear from me again unless you love what I said. So I have the 53 minutes we've had together. That is what I think my legacy will be. How present I was, how available I was to add value, and how much value actually got given. And that's, I try to give every single opportunity I have that, because I realize that this is my legacy encapsulated in less than an hour.
Yeah, right. Well, thank you so much for this engaging and insightful conversation. What a great time we've had.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you so very much. Great interview, great research, great everything. It was beautiful.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, what a great conversation. As we're wrapping up, I want to make sure that you, our listeners and viewers, know how you can connect and take advantage of Kevin's quarterly group coaching program, where Kevin brings together a lot of like-minded, heart-driven individuals, enhancing their life, their love, their wealth. For the listeners that are out there that do want to take this to another level higher up, visit nextleveluniversity.com/group coaching. Kevin, thanks again for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you so very much for having me.
Thanks again for all your support, ladies and gentlemen. Please remember to seize your days, enjoy those sunrises, sunsets, and all the adventures in between. I'm Michael Klassen. Thanks for watching the show. Just a reminder that you can get all of our resources, other episodes, and read our blog posts at 5ampodcast.com. Hey, 5am friends, we're on a mission to bring these transformative conversations to a greater audience through more FM radio, cable TV, and Roku TV. And we need your help to make that happen. If you've found value in our discussions, please consider supporting this expansion at buymeacoffee.com/5ampodcast. That's the number 5am podcast. Every dollar brings us closer to our goal. Thanks for being part of this journey. Together, we're changing lives one morning momentum at a time.